you cross that border. I mean, at times, it's like a sort of religious flash or non-sexual orgasm or something. I mean, it's just a wonderful feeling when you get through it. It's never had it from anything else, ever. I found cannabis smuggling, more addictive than any other activity I'd ever done. I mean, I never lost any sleep at night thinking I was doing something that was morally wrong.
Of course.
And I have always felt that the law against cannabis use is rather sinister and evil. So felt in sort of some naive, idealistic way that I was actually doing good.
After more than 2 years of undercover work, it's culminated in a series of arrests and the smashing of what's being called one of the world's biggest drugs rings.
I think the getting caught bit was an important part of my being happy now, really.
Yeah.
It's probably the best thing that happened to me. I mean, to be reminded every day that there's a death row, that building is a death row, of course, is ominous. You've got to think about it. Definitely a much better person than the one who went in, and probably a better person than I am now.
Since then, have you ever thought about going back to the life?
Oh, several times.
Okay.
Several times. I mean, the first time was as soon as I got out, because I thought, well, tactically, that's the best. That's the last thing they're going to expect. Now, they think I'm going to be still.
Jesus, Howard, you are crazy.
I don't.
London Real Academy. Build the best you.
When I go in and look at a person or a business, I want to hear him talk about his dreams.
Am I living in alignment to the way I want to be living? And there's a feeling you get if you're not.
A community of action-oriented people that will keep you accountable to your goals. Sign up now for a free 30-day trial. London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. When I first moved to London in 1997, one of the first books I read was Mr. Nice. And this was the story of a man in Britain who became the world's most famous and most accomplished cannabis smuggler. And I never thought that one day I would get to sit down in my studios and speak to him for over 2 hours. And I got the chance to do so about 2 years ago alongside MMA fighter James the Colossus Thompson. And it was a really special day and a special time for me and a special time for London Real. And I really wanted to have Howard back on the show, but as many of you know, he's been diagnosed with inoperable cancer. And so we don't have much time left with Howard, and I just wanted to, re-edit this show and make it so you could kind of see all of Howard at once and re-release this as a Redux episode, because Howard means so much to me. He means so much to people all over the world for, really the crusading work he did with cannabis. And alongside that, he's got the most incredible stories in the world. He's the most incredible personality and has such a warm vibe about him that I just know you're going to love this. And this is kind of our tribute back to you, Howard, for everything you've done for really just everyone in the world, and also for the work you've done is just heightening awareness of the really ridiculous drug laws that we have, and how all of that really needs to be reviewed and really needs to be thought about. So for you, Howard, for everything you've done for the world, we give you this, which is the Redux episode we shot 2 years ago. And if you don't know much about Howard Marks, you're going to get to know him very well for the next 2 hours. So thank you so much and enjoy. London Reel Set Design by Timothy Olton. This is London Reel. I am Brian Rose. With me today is Mr. James the Colossus Thompson, who is a heavyweight mixed martial arts fighter who has appeared in Cage Rage, Elite Extreme Combat, the Pride Fighting Championship, and who is definitely not Mr. Nice in the cage.
Like what you did there, Brian.
You like that?
I like that, mate.
I've been working on that for a couple of
No,
days.
that's good, mate. That's good. I'll
Right.
that.
And our guest today is Mr. Howard Marks, who is a Welsh author and former international cannabis smuggler who moved consignments as large as 30 tons, avoided the grasp of international law enforcement for 2 decades, and was connected with groups such as the CIA, the IRA, MI6, the Mafia, maybe the Yakuza?
Yes.
Okay. He was eventually convicted by the DEA in 1988 and handed a 25-year sentence to the federal penitentiary, but you were released in April 95 after serving only 7 years.
That's absolutely correct, Brad.
Howard, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
It's
Thank you.
it's a real pleasure having you.
No, it's good to be here.
I think in some ways you're like the quintessential London Reel guest.
Thank you.
I don't know exactly what that means.
No, I was wondering myself, but it's a good thing, Howard.
Yeah,
It's a
it sounds
thing.
good.
Yeah, it
doesn't
sounds good. It's good. It's good.
It's a compliment, definitely. You know, Howard. I moved to Britain in 1997 as an American, obviously, and I went to work in the city in finance. And one of my first introductions to British culture was reading your book, Mr. Nice. And I just assumed that everyone was like you.
Right, of course. You must be very relieved to find it.
Yeah, that soon changed. But it was such a wonderfully written book. I don't know what it is about it. It was a lack of ego or your storytelling. I don't know, but it really hit home for me, and I loved it so much. And I was just wondering if you could tell us about the book. And also, I was wondering, why do you think that as a society we love the rebel, we love the Robin Hood type, or the John Dillingers or the Howard Marks that seem to be flaunting the law with some type of like higher purpose or greater good?
Yes, I mean, I think its success was largely due to my having entirely the wrong target audience in mind when I wrote it. I mean, I wrote it for fellow geriatrics, really, to sort of give them a sense of nostalgia or to try and inject some glamour into their shit-ridden lives. None of those bought it, none of those bought it at all, but the kids did. Huh. So, I think when you mentioned the lack of ego, just really just due to thinking I was writing for another group of people.
So how old were you when you wrote that book?
I wrote it after I came out of prison.
Okay, so that was your early 50s then?
Yes, early 50s, yes.
And you thought it was just kind of an ode to
good
life of the past?
Yes,
and...
yes, I did. Yeah, I never thought it would be sort of picked up by the younger generation.
Which it was, and you became kind of a folk hero or a symbol of a new generation, really?
Something like that, yes. I mean, I think its success obviously was largely due to the amount of sort of cannabis smoking that was going on here, which I didn't know really. I'd been banged up in prison in the States. I had no idea how popular it was. Because in my early day, cannabis smoking was pretty much the privilege of sort of middle-class academics or something in universities. I mean, the postman wasn't smoking it, the plumber wasn't smoking it, but when I came out of prison, everyone seemed to be smoking it.
Yeah, can you explain that? Because I think these days, especially with the medical marijuana in California and in America, everyone seems to be smoking it. But
yes.
You were introduced to it at Oxford, is that right?
Yes, that's right, And as I say, it was a sort of, deemed as some kind of intellectual academic experiment with themselves. And of course, everything was imported then rather than sort of grown in the backyard or in various sort of clandestine places. So that's changed a lot. But I wasn't aware of that change.
I was thinking, do you, because like you say, importing it, there's so much to that, like you would know.
Yes, right.
But there's so much to that. Whereas getting a room, setting it up yourself, and with the cost, it just seems to. Is that what usually happens now?
Yes, I mean about half of the cannabis consumed in Britain is grown in Britain. Right. Yes, I mean roughly about half of it. which of course makes it very difficult for the authorities to legalize it now. I mean, if it was all imported, they could slap an importation tax or slap some sort of tax on it. Now it's going to be very difficult. I mean, people don't pay tax growing cabbage, so they're probably not going to.
I know for it like that. It's almost like distilleries, isn't it?
Yes, no, that's right.
Yeah, of course, it's exactly the same.
It's like a post-prohibition thing in the States, yeah, of course.
You mentioned that all along, even when you're doing your dealing and your smuggling in the 60s and 70s, that you assumed it would be legalized at some point.
Yes,
right?
yes, and I'm still of that sort of like frame of mind that it's just about to be legalized. I've felt that for sort of 50 years now, so by inductive logic, it's obviously not worth listening to. I mean, I still feel that.
Do you
Optimistic.
Yeah.
Do you see the progress they're making in the states? We just had the state of Colorado, the state of Washington legalize it for non-medical uses.
Yes.
There's still this overshadow of the federal government and what they're going to do. But is that quote unquote progress in your mind?
Oh yes, very much so, and from the most unlikely place. I mean, I thought that America would be the last country to somehow or other pioneer its decriminalization or legalization. Particularly for recreational purposes. Yes, I mean, medical marijuana, you can see that that's bound to get through sometimes. If there's something around which can cure you, then doctors who have taken the Hippocratic Oath are sort of almost ethically bound to try and make that legal.
And you thought the States would be the last place because it has such a Puritan... Well, you were caught up in the Reagan era of the just say no.
Yes.
You could even argue that your arrest and conviction was based on the fact of this gung-ho president saying just say no, the war on drugs, etc.
Yes. I mean, they didn't have to think about whether or not to arrest me and charge me. I was an obvious candidate for that. Yeah.
So in a way, it was more of a political decision than a legal decision.
Yes.
And did you ever consider yourself a political prisoner when you were in the federal pen?
No, I mean, I did it for the money. I didn't really, I can't pretend I was doing it for any other reason. I was foolish enough not to have studied American law, so didn't know whether I was breaking it or not, because there are so many sort of all-embracing laws in America, like racketeering or continuous criminal enterprise, which we're not familiar with over here. But I can't say, I didn't know, I did know I could make a lot of money by doing it. So I just regard myself as having lost at the game that I decided to play. I don't think it's a case for sympathy or tragedy, really, at all.
If you had more legal insight, would you have done things different in America?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you probably would have continued longer?
Continued longer, yes. Maybe never got caught.
What would you have done differently?
Well, for example, my ex-wife was arrested.
You start there. You start with the ex-wife.
Well, she was arrested as well.
Right.
Purely because she answered the phone at home. I mean, a couple of people bring up, I said, no, he's in Hong Kong for a week or something like that. And that, by American law,
conspiracy
is further in the conspiracy.
Because she lied where you were, or just because
because she was aware that she was assisting someone who could reasonably expected to be a dope dealer, finding her husband, who is a dope dealer, and so she got arrested and extradited for those sort of reasons. So obviously, I would have, set things up so she would never have had to answer the phone. There's a list of things like that, which it wouldn't have taken long to read a bit of American law. I was just very stupid.
You were always one step ahead of the authorities, and I think you've been said that you even had better technology than the authorities at that time.
Well, we did. We did. I mean, that's the big difference, I think, between then and now. I mean, in those days, we had more money to spend than the authorities did. We had faster cars, we had better communication devices, we had faster boats. Now the gap in technology between law enforcement and those breaking it is massive. It's absolutely massive, particularly when you think of mobiles and computers and everything, and the data collection that they have. So it would necessarily be a very, very different business now, I think.
Okay.
I mean, probably requires the same sort of characters to do it, but definitely a shifting goalpost.
Did you have a whole legal team with you and an accounting team, and did you have people that you kept close that would advise you of what to do, not to do?
No,
Was that all
no,
in your head?
yes, it wasn't that sort of setup at all. I mean, I did have an accountant, accountant's firm, but that was really, and I'd be careful to ensure that only sort of legitimate money, or sort of like apparently legitimate money, would be handled by them.
And you had your legitimate phases, right? You ran a wine importation business out of Palma.
Yes, I did. I ran loads of things, everything from sort of massage parlors in Bangkok to bars in Spain. But I mean, they all lost money.
Okay.
But I mean, that was my way of paying tax, I suppose.
Okay. I mean, when you did that legitimate stint, like in Palma, what brought you back in? I mean, what ultimately was it? Was it the juice, the adrenaline, the fun?
Yes, all that. I mean, it's I found cannabis smuggling, more addictive than any other activity I'd ever done.
Yeah, you described it as a game.
Yes, it is
earlier.
a game. Yes,
And
it is.
It's obviously the money and everything, but getting one over.
Yes.
And especially when it's cannabis.
Yes.
It's not.
Yes.
It's not harming people. You're actually doing benefit.
Yes, I mean, I never lost any sleep at night
No.
thinking I was doing something that was morally wrong.
No, of course.
And I have always felt that the law against cannabis use is rather sinister and evil. So felt in sort of some naive, idealistic way that I was actually doing good.
Yeah. No,
Did that keep you going sometimes?
Yes.
Where when it got
Yeah,
hard,
yeah,
you were
yes.
like, I am doing the better thing.
Yes.
I am Robin Hood.
Yeah, not Robin Hood, because I've never robbed the rich.
Okay. Fair enough. So then who would you equate yourself with in those hard times when you're like, I am doing a greater good here?
The old, I'd like to, this has never been asked me before, but the first ever first ever outlaw, the first ever person to be called an outlaw was a British outlaw called Hereward the Wake. And Hereward sort of, obviously it's the same name as Howard, really. And the idea is sort of just waking people up to kind of thing. So I would say more like Hereward the Wake than Robin Hood.
And what was Hereward known for?
Being an outlaw, but not sort of breaking the law, just almost like a dropout, living outside the law, which is what the word really means. I won't take anything from you, but don't expect anything from me.
Not being encompassed by the system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dropout really is very close to it.
Right.
I was watching your movie the other night, and I know it's a movie, and it's not exactly your life, but
Sure.
it portrays you. I mean, you graduated from Oxford with,
Yes.
was it a nuclear physics degree?
Yes.
Okay, and it seemed like you tried to kind of go straight. You stopped smoking cannabis, you moved to London, you started teaching.
Yes.
So something in your mind must have said, okay, now it's time to get serious, Howard? Is that...
Yes. I mean, I had a conventional career in mind, which was to be an academic, to be a lecturer or a teacher or a research fellow or something like that. And I was reluctant to let that go. But at the same time, my involvement and the amount of time I was spending on cannabis dealing or cannabis smuggling was increasing. And there came a point where, it's so gradual. There wasn't a sort of like one
defining
moment or
moment,
anything. But certainly by the time I was 25, I, looking back, had then abandoned the halls of academia, if you like, and become a dope dealer.
It shows you that first deal in the movie, and Rhys Ifans portrayed you, and he's, we all know he's a badass actor.
Right.
And it was fantastic watching him being you. But I think you drove a car from Germany or Switzerland loaded with hash all the way to the UK. And it was funny, people forget, the kids these days forget that there used to be all these individual borders between
That's right,
countries.
that's right, yeah.
So you have a potential adrenaline rush, frightening moment every country you go through.
That's right. The rewards are much greater in those days.
And then
Given the adrenaline.
And then you have to take the boat across, and then you
Yeah.
have to go through UK customs as well.
Yes.
How was that? How did that feel? Because in the movie you looked very cool doing it, but how was it? I mean, was it?
Well, it was wonderfully exciting,
Okay.
and of course scary. I mean, there comes about, God, what's going to happen? Anything can happen. I might never go home again. I might be gone for sort of 20 years or anything. And all that fear comes in, and then you almost submit to it. you know, okay, well, I'm going for it, you know.
If it happens, it happens.
Yeah, let's go, you know, just give it all I've got. And then when, you know, you cross that border, I mean, as I've said several times, you know, it's like a sort of religious flash or non-sexual orgasm or something. It's just a wonderful feeling when you get through. It's I've never had it from anything else, ever.
It's almost like gambling, except you're gambling with your life.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
that is what it is, isn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah.
So I can
you are
imagine
risking that, yes, it is.
the relief, what comes, not only is your life okay, but you've got X amount in the back of the car.
Yeah, you can make lots of money.
Yeah, you've got lots of money as well.
Yeah.
To go, yeah.
And then you do it again at the next border, and the next. You must have been exhausted by the time you got home.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, the sort of final border is, of course, you know, the crowning border.
So how many times did you pass different borders? I was just thinking of
on
one border.
one run could have up to 3 or 4.
Oh,
borders,
Jesus.
you know.
I'd be able to maybe do one, but when it comes to the third, I would like...
And not only do you have to roll through, but you have to also be composed. Is there any way that you used to talk to yourself, or would you try to become someone else in order to be cool with the customs officials?
There was no sort of like script in my mind or anything like that. I mean, just the obvious things. You mustn't look nervous. You've got to look relaxed, you know. Well, actually, you can look nervous sometimes. I mean, it's odd. I mean, in the 60s, sometimes the best disguise would be a squalid hippie who's obviously a smoker and not very rich. You know.
Okay, so they'd let him through.
Yeah.
Because he might have a small possession, but he's not smuggling.
Yeah. So I mean, it would change. You know, I'd want to sort of like not conform to the profile they had of what a smuggler is, but that would vary both from their side and my interpretation of it.
Okay. The more you think about it, I would imagine the worse it gets.
Yeah, because
like
you know what it's like when you start thinking of double bluffs, treble bluffs.
Yeah.
You know, again, though, the similarity with gambling, isn't it?
No, massively. Yeah.
James has some experience with
Yeah.
gambling.
Sorry, I got lost. I got lost there for a second.
You know, there's a part in the book where I think you go deep into Pakistan. Is that it?
Yes.
To go, is it to go pick up some hash? Is that right?
It was more to test the quality of the hash. I mean, there was a significant investment. You know, I mean, $1 or $2 million by my American Californian partners.
Okay.
And Pakistan obviously very sort of like careful who they let into a hash fort or something like that. So my job was just to ensure the quality, and the Californian lads were very politically minded, and they wanted to. And well, I mean, even America was, you know, heavily against the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. So I had to ensure that each block would be stamped with something like "Smoke Russia Away" or "Crumble the Kremlin," or you know, something like yeah. So I had to make sure the stamp was right and the quality was.
And this is early '80s that you ventured into.
This is mid '80s.
Mid-'80s.
Yes, yeah.
And did you try to dress up and look like a local? Did
Oh
you?
yes, and I even had a Pakistan passport as well.
Okay.
Of course, dressing up looking like a local doesn't require a sort of great deal of makeup or anything. You just, you know, put something over your head and something over your body, and that's it. And sit in the back being very, very quiet. Hoping that they talk to you.
Everything crossed.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried the wax, the THC wax, rather than the hashish?
What, the oil?
No, I think they do actually call it wax. It's like I don't know, it's like a wax. And it is just almost pure THC?
Yes, I mean, it's what they also call scuff or something like that. It's like live THC. You sort of scrape it off the plant when it's alive.
That'll be it.
Yeah. Well, traditionally, that's the way they always used to do it in countries like Nepal, Kashmir, where, you know, kids actually would sort of run through the fields with like Hessian clothes.
Right.
So the stuff would like rub off on that, and then they would like take it off with a knife, and either go like that to make what they'd call a temple stick, or go like that to make what they'd call a temple ball. You know.
God. That's mental.
What is your preferred method of consuming cannabis?
A traditional 1960s joint with lots of tobacco, actually, is my preferred method.
Which is the first one you spoke at Oxford, pretty much?
Yes, it was, yes. I mean, and I think very often the first hit you have of anything remains the best, you know.
And will you ever stop smoking, or does that thought ever enter your head?
It does enter my head. I mean, I get bronchitis once a year. It sort of always enters my head then, and usually it doesn't dissipate unless I give up smoking for about a week or two. Okay. But in American prison, I give it up for 5 years. So I don't feel that worried about it. I think, you know, if a doctor says, look, you better stop, I can't stop. I know there's other ways of getting the same high by eating it or anything like that.
Are you a fan of eating it or any other drinking it? In California, there's so many things. There's popsicles and
yes. There's about 100 different ways.
So lotions.
Yes.
Electronic cigarettes now they have.
Yes. No, I've got one of those, like a vaporizer and everything. Got a portable one. Yes, I've experimented with all that. And like them all, really. There isn't any way of ingesting it I don't like. I don't think. But you know, to answer the question, the preferred way it's a traditional sort of UK joint.
How much does it take you to get stoned now? Have you built up some kind of tolerance?
Immunity or something?
Yeah.
No, I get stoned on the first joint of the day.
And then you kind of stay at that level, do you?
Well, I can get more stoned. I do, and it's not as if I've got any immunity to it. But I suppose I have a tremendous familiarity with the state, so it's unlikely that I just function.
Right. You can still do everything.
I notice getting stoned.
Right.
You mentioned you had a Pakistani passport, and I was just wondering, for people that haven't read your book and don't have a scale, because I don't know how much certain Americans know about you, and I was just wondering if you could just give us kind of a scale, like how many passports did you have, or I mentioned the 30 tons as big shipments as big as that, but what kind of money was involved in passports, and what was the scale of your operation before it all changed in '88?
Right. Well, as regards passports. Because I tried to list them all when I wrote my autobiography, and I could remember 43
passports.
43 different identities, most of which would have been backed up with a passport, yes.
Okay. That's a lot.
Yes, and that might not be the total, so it's at least 43, but it wouldn't be significantly more, I'm sure.
And from what I remember, the title of the book came because you were kind of tired of borrowing other people's identities. You wanted to take a guy who wasn't going to leave the UK, who you could assume his identity.
Yes,
and that is Mr. Nice, but you call him Mr. Nice.
That's right. Yes. I mean, it was he'd been released from prison, and we had a common friend. There was someone who knew both of us, and he'd been convicted of murder and released after about 12 years, which is fairly normal over here. And had no intention of going abroad, largely because he didn't like the beer abroad. He was a simple soul. And he was very happy to let me use his identity. And if, of course, the guy is still around and everything, you can back it up with sort of membership to a snooker hall, or you can keep sort of updating it.
Right. Okay.
And his name was Donald Nice, as you say, but I preferred the name Donald Nice, and it was lovely sort of checking into hotels in Pakistan and stuff. What's your name, Mr. Nice? Well, it's a great name.
I get the feeling that's the part you love most about it, was just the check-ins.
Yes.
Or hearing the deal had made it through, or...
Yes, I mean, all that is good. Obviously, hearing sort of success, at the other end of the world is a wonderful feeling too.
And how big was your empire at one point? I mean, what kind of numbers are we talking here?
Well, it's been sort of grossly exaggerated, and law enforcement tends to have its own idea of what a criminal organization is. I mean, there was no organization. There was a bunch of loosely knit people who occasionally came together for a deal and then split off and did another deal with other people and came back together again. There wasn't an organization. When the DEA say that there was like either 300 or 600 people working for me, just not true. I mean, I wouldn't have minded if it was true, you know. And, you know, the DA also say it was the biggest dope deal the world has ever known. For sure, I was trying to be, you know, but they nevertheless exaggerated it all. And there wasn't an organization, or they even called it the Marx Cartel. There wasn't that sort of organization at all.
Okay. Is that the kind of language that they use to help
It's the framework that they try to fit all their evidence into, which I suppose is fair enough.
And so they're probably talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product or more, probably
Yes,
billions.
and they do the usual thing of use the street value and, you know, all the tricks of the trade, as it were, to try and increase the chances of getting a heavy sentence.
Has there ever been a drug smuggler that stuck with a single product that you know of? Because for cannabis, you might have been one of the largest, but so many other of the cartels, as you say, diversify into so many different things.
Into cocaine and yes, there was a guy by the name of Donald Steinberg who during the early 80s smuggled enormous quantities of marijuana and only marijuana. I mean, his life is documented in a book called The Underground Empire, which you know, for a third of it focuses on him. And I think at any one time he'd have 3 ships, right, with several tens of tons on them, heading towards the American coast at each time. He would count the money in terms of Samsonites. He'd know that a Samsonite full of $100 was $500,000. So he just count the Samsonite. Yeah, that looks about right. Well, okay, fine. So he was a massive, you know, and certainly the biggest marijuana dealer there's ever been, but stuck to his product.
What happened to him?
He got arrested, and it was at the time that the American justice system decided that the best way of dealing with gangs of various kinds was to go for the leader and get him to sort of roll over on everyone else, rather than the traditional way of saying, who's your boss? All right, who's working for you? Snitch on all of them, and we'll give you a new identity. Right. So he had something like that.
Start from the top down.
Yeah. Syntax, they were called it.
Do you think you can ever get so big? You get to a level of making money or of being, you know, good at what you do.
Yeah.
You're always going to get caught. It's almost impossible once they've decided, or once you're known, and they're going to head for you, that at some point you are going to get caught.
I don't think it's inevitable. Right. I don't think it's inevitable, because obviously some people will die before that happens. And, you know, I mean, but that's about the only.
That's the only way of getting out of it. Yeah. There's no other little trap door.
No, it stops completely. Right. You know? I mean, they're always prepared to crank it up again, as I would be if I thought I could definitely get away with something. Right. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So that's one of my questions. So you get out in '95 from the federal penitentiary, and I do want to ask you about that in a little bit. But since then, have you ever thought about going back to the life?
Oh, several times. Okay. Several times. I mean, the first time was as soon as I got out, because I thought, well, tactically that's the best. That's the last thing they're going to expect. Now, you know, they think I'm going to be still suffering.
Now's the time.
Jesus, Howard, you are crazy.
I know, but I didn't. I tried. You know, I started, but of course, so much had changed that I couldn't get any partners or anything like that. It was hopeless. But yes, I think of it. I still think of smuggling ways. You know, yeah, of course, but. I've always come to the conclusion, you know, before it's too late, that I probably wouldn't get away with it. So I've not done it.
As in they're watching you, or people are worried about being associated with you, or?
Yes, I mean both, really. I mean the amount of surveillance, because obviously I occasionally come under surveillance now. I mean, probably about 2 or 3 days every few months.
I find that hard to believe that they're still surveilling you.
Well, they would look so silly if I was...
Yeah. You know, suddenly came.
If I got away with it.
And they is the UK government, or are they in conjunction with
well, more the American government, actually.
Really?
But the UK government almost gave up. You know, they said, they're better the devil we know than the devil we don't know. You know, and he's not a bad guy, really. Let's keep him at it.
So you don't have enemies in the UK government as much?
In MI6 I do, yes. You know, I mean, in the British Secret Service, the guy who recruited me, I've heard, really doesn't like me at all.
And he was friends of yours at Oxford, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people have seen the latest James Bond movie, and they think of MI6 as the building on the Thames.
Yes.
But I was wondering if you could describe what MI6 was when you were recruited.
Yes, indeed, yeah. I mean, officially it didn't exist.
Right.
I mean, there's certainly no sort of building or headquarters on the Thames. It officially just simply didn't exist. And it always used to amuse us over here that, you know, in America, you know, outside Washington, there'd be a big road sign saying CIA, you know. I mean, you know, it was, you know, it didn't exist at all. There were, but there was a sort of idea that there was a British Secret Service, but an understanding, well, yes, of course it can't officially exist, otherwise it wouldn't be a Secret Service. You know? But it's the same firm as James Bond. Yeah. Well, MI6, you know, stands for Military Intelligence 6. MI5 stands for Military Intelligence 5. MI5 looks after foreign spies that come here, you know, to try to ensure that there's no Russian spies or whoever's our enemy these days sort of lurking around doing stuff. And MI6 was a more proactive thing where agents would go outside to foreign countries and spy. Okay. And of course, James Bond was one of those. And I was another one.
You were too.
Yeah, but I didn't have a license to kill. I just saw myself as having a license to deal, really.
So, does that mean there's an MI 1, 2, 3?
No, right. You know, I don't know why they started 5. Yes.
Oh, right.
I don't know.
To trick you.
Yeah, frighten you.
Right, okay, yeah.
So did they recruit you because you were smuggling, or did they recruit you because they knew you from Oxford and knew you were a smart guy?
Both, really. I mean, they had some, you know, reference of, you know, someone they recruited while he was at Oxford or while we were at Oxford. They recruited this friend of mine, and you know, unbeknown to me, and so they had a reference. Yes, he's all right. He's solid. He's okay. And they had their own information that, God, he's smuggling dope with the IRA. You know, they might be able to, because at that time the IRA was a problem.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your involvement with the IRA and how that worked?
Yes, I can. I met a guy by the name of Jim McCann, who'd recently escaped from Crumlin Road Prison in Belfast, and it was the first escape from there since the Second World War. You know, this was in very early 70s, or 1970. And he said he was, you know, Chief Intelligence Officer of the Belfast Intelligence kind of brigade of the IRA, and I believed him. I mean, as far as I was concerned, yes, he was an IRA member. But, I mean, it has to be said that he's the only person in history whom the IRA decided they had to say he's not one of us. So the IRA say he's not. He says he was. Right. The safest thing for me to do is to take the IRA's word for it, that he wasn't, that he just can't be.
What it seems like I remember when I read your book, so you'll find a link, i.e. this Jim McCann. Now, you haven't gone out looking for him to be part of the IRA, and you don't really know if he was, if he wasn't.
That's right.
But because he says he's known to be linked, then you get tied with the bush of dealing with the IRA.
That's correct, but I mean, at that time in the 1960s, a sympathy with the Catholic minority of Northern Ireland was pretty much part of everyone's left-wing agenda. I mean, in 1969, for example, the British Army was sent into Ireland, into Northern Ireland, to defend the Catholics.
Right.
Basically on the IRA side.
Okay.
So there was a lot of sympathy for the Catholic minority. Also, Jim is of the nature that he's very happy to do sort of interviews with sort of underground newspapers and left-wing kind of newspapers. Right. So everyone knew of Jim McCann. He was a sort of like Fidel Castro, if you like, Northern Europe, you know, and more Che Guevara, actually, you know, that kind of image. So all I knew, and just an editor of an underground magazine was a friend of mine, and he had interviewed Jim McCann. So all I knew of, there was this guy who could smuggle in loads of arms into Ireland on the side of someone that all us lefties, supported and believed in.
Perfect.
And I mean, I had no problem thinking it would be better off if he smuggled in dope rather than guns. That was okay for everyone concerned, as far as I could see. So I went ahead. So I didn't have ethical problems with it.
No.
But did it help that they were the left and you sympathized with the left?
Yes, completely.
That eased your conscience into it?
Yes, absolutely. And because they hadn't started killing kids and stuff like that, or risking their lives of children visiting the Tower of London or something. Okay. They weren't well, yes, I suppose they were. They were more freedom fighters than terrorists, and I know the distinction can be easily blurred.
Yeah.
But, they came across to all of us then in London as freedom fighters.
Was that like a revolutionary idea to think I can smuggle dope through these arms connections?
As I know, yeah.
So did you just came up with that?
Yes.
While smoking, I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's not obvious to me. I mean, in retrospect, it's obvious.
Yes.
But at the time, it doesn't seem like anyone would have come up with that.
No, I mean, as far as I know, I was the first, but I mean, other people might well have thought about it.
Did you hear about the guy and then link it? He's getting arms in, you'll be able to get dope in.
Yes.
Or is that how you came?
Yes, I mean, they could get things into a Northern European airport, in Ireland. I had the connections to get things up into the air.
Right.
So,
the rest is history. Like massive light bulb.
See an opportunity here.
I can just imagine, everyone blinded.
Yeah, it was an easy one.
And how did that relationship work out over the years? Was it a net sum game for everyone, or were there downsides for that?
There were downsides, but it was a net gain for sure. I mean, we did a tremendous number of consignments, all of which got through, but one got busted after it got through, if you like, and so like Jim got charged with it, Jim McCann, but he got acquitted, saying he was infiltrating the MI6 through me, and of course I later used the same defence, saying I was infiltrating the IRA on behalf of MI6. We both got acquitted, which is absurd.
How many times can you use that get out of jail free MI6 card? Because you used it. You said you were in it for 9 months technically. In
yes,
MI6,
no, that's true.
But you used that card for 15 years?
Yes.
How can you keep using that?
Because it didn't officially exist. It was meant to be secret. I mean, you could, just go. You never really we never really get out of their clutches. You could just use that bullshit, really.
But
once you're up there, we never even signed the Official Secrets Act.
So it was just it was having a pint in the pub and talking about it and giving some information here and there. And
yes, and when I skipped bail, they sort of did a sort of like severe kind of investigation into it, and they admitted, the MI6, the lawyer for MI6 admitted, he was an agent for us.
So that put
all he had to say was no, he wasn't. Nothing I could have done.
But that put doubt in the jury's mind.
Well, it convinced the jury.
Because that's all it is, isn't it? Convincing people.
Yes,
You come up, and you were, but just more exaggerated. How are they going to know where that exaggeration?
Well, that's right, and particularly during my trial, the prosecution was trying to say, no, he wasn't a member of MI6, he wasn't, and then they finally conceded.
Right.
They said, all right, he was then. What's the jury going to think? Come on,
God, that must have been amazing when you got not guilty.
That was wonderful, yeah.
Jesus.
And this is when you were acquitted in London, right?
That's right, at the Old Bailey in London.
And what year was that, roughly?
That was 1981 that I got acquitted.
Okay, and you probably became much more well-known then.
Yes, no, that had a lot of publicity, and I, of course, took it as a direct message from God to carry on smuggling,
Right.
The big man upstairs, he's
obviously
on my
side.
He's obviously on my hands here. Look how it's going, Jesus. Out of all the characters, I mean, from reading the book, like you mentioned, Jim McCann, good and bad, who are somewhat really stand out for you?
Well, Jim, of course, I mean, he's the most extraordinary character I've ever met, I think. And people who know him, people who know us both, mean, that's the only character they say, unreservedly, yeah, you got him right. So I think I could, and I think that must indicate how fascinated I was with this character, that I could sort of get across what he was really like.
For the book or the movie?
For the book.
For the book, okay.
For the book, yeah.
How did the movie do for him?
It increased that, in fact, I mean, I think David Thewlis played him
it was
very, very well. I mean, almost stole every scene that he was in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So he was the biggest character.
Yes.
Do you stay in touch with him? What happened to him?
No, I mean, I have been in touch with him since I left prison. Seen him about 2 or 3 times, but not for several years now. I mean, not for about 6 or 7 years. I haven't seen him since the film came out, for example. But our children are friends with each other. I mean, they've got better things to do than talk about their dads, but they are friends with each other. So there is a contact. I mean, occasionally you see a photograph of him with his kids. And
I thought he died. I must get.
No.
I thought it was something about a tank. I'm way off here.
I don't know where you are.
I'm on about.
Yeah, no, I don't know about the tank.
I'm throwing tanks in here. The lot.
No, he's definitely still alive.
Oh, right.
He's about 73 now. He was photographed by a newspaper quite recently, like within the last 6 months or something like that. He lives in Holland, spends a lot of time in Russia. Right. Doesn't come to Britain.
No.
Is there any danger of you associating with any of your former, colleagues or any of your former associates? I mean, is there any danger with you meeting him, or do you have to be careful about appearances when it comes to stuff like that?
Well, generally?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I would never worry about meeting Jim, I mean, perhaps I'd be foolish not to, but I mean, I wouldn't. I see my, Malik, who was my Pakistani contact, I see him almost every year. I go and visit him in Pakistan. But it's a friendship, I mean, yes, okay, it's a friendship based.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonreelacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonreelacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.
And the show is 4 hours long sometimes.
That's the longest it can ever be. The minimum length is actually an hour. Sometimes it's very
And if people want to find out where you're going to be, is it your website? Is that your website?
Yes.